Hello, class. I'm Dr. Larry Tyler, the professor of this course for this semester. Our first lecture will be on the introductory material for the Gospel of John. So let's begin. We see here the authorship. At the very outset of John's Gospel, it claims to represent apostolic eyewitness testimony regarding Jesus' earthly ministry. John 1:14 states, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory and the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." But which apostle was responsible for writing John's Gospel? In John chapter 21, verse 20, it is written that Jesus is shown to converse with the disciple whom Jesus loved. Then in John 21:24, it is written, "This is the disciple who testified to these things," that is, the signs in this gospel, "and who wrote them down." But who is the disciple whom Jesus loved? The disciple whom Jesus loved is given charge of Jesus' mother. We see in John 19, verses 26 and 27, and became a first-hand witness of the crucifixion at the foot of the cross. In chapter 20, the disciple whom Jesus loved is shown the empty tomb, and all that is said about his reaction is that he saw and believed. The disciple whom Jesus loved was one of a group of 7 disciples who goes fishing by the Sea of Galilee. Therefore, he must be one of the following mentioned: Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples. Since the disciple whom Jesus loved is not named in this gospel, then the author must be either one of the 2 sons of Zebedee or the 2 other disciples not mentioned by process of elimination. If he is one of the 2 sons of Zebedee, he can hardly be James, since according to John 21:23, there was a rumor in the early church that the disciple whom Jesus loved would not die. But James was martyred in AD 42, according to Acts 12:2, which states, "He, Herod Agrippa, had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword." Therefore, the author is either John, the son of Zebedee, or one of the 2 unnamed disciples who went fishing in John 21, verse 2. From the apostolic lists found in the Synoptic Gospels and Acts, only the following apostles remain: Matthew, or he also goes by Levi, Simon the Zealot, James the son of Alphaeus, and John the son of Zebedee. Of these, Matthew is highly unlikely, as he is credited writing the Gospel of Matthew. Simon the Zealot and James the son of Alphaeus are obscure figures whom no one has ever suggested as possible authors of John's Gospel. While the previous reconstruction has been challenged in recent years, it has not been refuted and remains the most plausible explanation of the available data. But what does it matter? Actually, holding John the son of Zebedee to be the author matters a great deal, because Johannine authorship safeguards the Gospel's character as an apostolic eyewitness testimony. It does matter whether the author of John's Gospel was an apostolic eyewitness or an anonymous member of a late 1st century sect. Therefore, it was necessary to present a thorough account of the Gospel's internal evidence, which turns out to be decidedly in favor of an apostolic authorship. Now we look at the external evidence. When the church father Irenaeus used John's Gospel to refute Gnostic teaching in the second half of the 2nd century AD, the Gospel's place in the church's canon had been cemented once and for all. Irenaeus claimed as his informant none other than Polycarp, who was himself a disciple of the late Apostle John. Irenaeus writes, John, the disciple of the Lord who leaned back on his breast, published the gospel while he was resident at Ephesus in Asia. Echoing this, Clement of Alexandria remarks, John, last of all, composed a spiritual gospel. From the end of the 2nd century on, the church is virtually unanimous in attributing the fourth gospel's authorship to John, the son of Zebedee. Next, let's move from authorship to the place and the date of writing of this gospel. Regarding the place, mention has already been made of the information supplied by the church father Irenaeus that John published the gospel while he was resident at Ephesus in Asia. No other location has the support of the early church fathers. Regarding the date of writing, the period subsequent to the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem seems likely. John's emphasis on the replacement of the temple, and we see in this gospel, he emphasizes the replacement of the temple in Jewish feasts, and this probably represents an effort to exploit the temple's destruction evangelistically in an effort to reach diaspora Jews and Gentiles attracted to Judaism, that is, Jewish proselytes. And so, if so, a day of after AD 70, but not immediately after the traumatic events in Jerusalem, seems most likely. Also, the reference to Peter's martyrdom seems to indicate that this event had already taken place at the time of writing. Since Peter was martyred around AD 65, this points to a date toward the last decades of the 1st century, placing the time of composition in the reign of the Roman Emperor Domitian, which was between AD 81 and 96. For these reasons, a date in the AD 80 seems most likely. Who were the recipients of this gospel? Regarding the gospel's audience, one should note the universal character of this gospel and the emphasis on the Jews' rejection of Jesus in the first half of the gospel. Taken together, these elements point to Jews and Gentiles attracted to Judaism in the dispersion, that is, the diaspora, and the larger Greco-Roman world at the end of the 1st century AD. The Gospel of John was thus written to the church at large. After all, it heralds the universal good news of salvation in Christ. The occasion and purpose of John's writing. The destruction of the Jerusalem temple left a gaping void in Jewish life. Judaism without a temple meant Judaism without a fully operational sacrificial system, including the priesthood. The question of what would become of Judaism was on everyone's mind. John's answer is clear. He hoped to encourage diaspora Jews and proselytes to turn to Jesus, the Messiah. John probably wrote to equip believers to proclaim the message of Jesus the Messiah among their unbelieving audiences. And the sources for this introductory material and lecture came from the Encountering John book by Andreas Kostenberger. And that completes this lecture.